Welcome everyone for this session. Glad to have you here. I'm sort of probably going to slightly set the stage and then give it over to to our experts here. So, education in the 21st century, right? Like, what does that mean? Of course, the thing that one expects to speak about in such a situation is about the rise of technology, how people are going to keep up with it, the role that AI has to play in knowledge production and so forth. But on the other hand, there's also the Oxford Martin School comes out with a study saying that 80% of jobs in 2040 are going to be obsolete, right? So how do we train people for that obsolescence? So at once we have a situation where we're trying to train young minds for dealing with the technocracy. On the other hand, it might be a futile exercise to do so. So how do we really balance this situation is, I think, the core of what I'd like to explore. I think it's broad enough that we can all bring in our expertises to discuss this. So over to you, ma'am.
Well, I am a teacher of English literature, and I am not within the university system. I teach people who have finished their university education, and I get them ready for various competitive exams. So I deal with adult education, and we are in the verge of a new era because of NEP 2020. There are lots of wonderful things about NEP 2020, which is it is going to bring in inclusivity and collaboration. And it is also the beginning of a new era of technology. In this discussion, I'm sure Tom will talk about technology, and Sir, you and Anirudh will talk about the university system. I am worried about what will happen to the people who are the majority in this country. There may be millions. I deal with thousands, 10,000s, who are coming back to education after a stint in doing some other job or family life. That is one thing. And how do we ensure inclusivity in a country where there is no accessibility? Still, I deal with students who do not have proper internet connectivity, and the huge economic divide is still very much glaring at us. So these are the issues that I would want to talk about in this discussion, but not right now, after we hear you.
Thank you. I think, this is a very broad topic, the future of education, and I think we can speak for a day. And when we talk about the future, I think there are a lot of aspects. One is, Anirudh has briefly mentioned about the technology, the intervention of AI, or the adoption of technology in education. And the professor was talking about the NEP, which is just about the regulatory changes, the kind of regulation existing in the country. When I see the education, my background is I work with the university as a part of senior leadership team for all the new initiatives. Apart from that, I sit at a couple of tech companies as a board member and the founders and co-founder level. And when I see the education landscape, we are talking about $3 trillion market globally, which is huge. Yeah. Out of that, 3.2 billion is all about higher education. If I pick up the technology, we are talking about close to $840 billion, which is the online or digital space globally. When you come to India, we are talking about a market of $225 billion. $225 billion. And when it comes to the higher education, 61 billion, and then comes to the online, it's $5 billion. So we are talking about the size of the market and the depth of the market, and how do we address it? I think there are a couple of points when we talk about future. One is how do we address the scale, and how do we ensure the kind of gross enrollment ratio. So we have been talking more about technology, the kind of policies adopted by the government or introduced by the government to ensure that higher education is accessible and make it accessible to each and everyone in the country. Still, we are having hardly 27% gross enrollment ratio nationally. What I'm trying to convey, the even 100 students coming out from the other PUC or 10 plus 2 or A levels, hardly 27 students are either going to the college or university for higher studies, or we don't have a data more than 27% going to the university or higher education. When it comes to Kerala, I think I just observed the budget law come out last week. We're talking about 44% gross enrollment ratio in Kerala, which is not even 50% of the students, kids coming out from the school, going to the university or access university education. So there are, I think, there are 2-3 topics. We can make it the debate, so the conversation a bit more live rather than we talk about the figures and statistics and data. I think the couple of new reforms. One is of course NEP, which is a good thing, and there are a lot of things to talk about NEP. The second is the invention of technology, the role of technology, especially after hearing all the unicorn stories. I come from Bangalore. Bangalore is a part of my base, and there are 6 unicorns, edtech unicorns from the same city. So that's the second thing. And third is the regulatory aspects of the kind of regulation the government is taking. The nationally, I think the NEP is there. When you take the state level, we are coming out with a policy. I'm welcoming the private universities, and in fact, introducing the privatization in the state, and welcoming the foreign university, and which was not there. Even though we welcomed FDI, the foreign direct investment in all the sectors, retail, healthcare, or defense. In irrespective of sectors, we welcomed the foreign direct investment, but it was not allowed in education until 2023. 2023 in higher education. I'm not talking about the so-called edtech or private education. We are talking about the higher education through universities and colleges. So there are a couple of things. There are 3-4 points. I think we can make it this conversation a bit more live rather than we talk. I prefer to take the questions from the audience, and especially the 3-4 topics which we believe the future of education. Future of education, of course, the technology has a role, and that's to set the context. Of course, technology has a role. At the same time, make it more inclusive and make it more accessible and affordable to the large mass, which is not there at the moment. Though we are talking about technology, though we are talking about the higher gross enrollment ratio, still not even 30% of our students or kids are going to the higher education. I think this is something more the most important factor and most critical factor which we can discuss and debate. What are the ways? How do we address that challenge? Which is 2 by 3rd of our population. Am I right? Am I setting the context? Yes. Thank you.
Hello. Can you hear me? Yeah, you can? Okay, good. I would have preferred a lapel mic because I'm not very good at this, because half the time when you speak, it keeps going down and then people say, hold it up, hold it up. So please yell when you can't hear me. I'm not in that, I don't belong to that establishment. I don't use the word disparagingly, but that framework which you think of as the education system. I'm outside it, and I have been outside it for the past few years. I had been teaching for about 20 years or so in Chennai, and then before that in various places abroad. So what I thought was I would, instead of talking about things like NEP, of which they are much, much more competent to talk about NEP, and the way the system is divided now as opposed to what it was in the past and so on. So it's best for me not to tread into that territory, because I am really not the person who is most competent to do it. So what I thought was I would say a few things which may seem like going against the grain. That's a part of it. And to put it succinctly, when I was teaching in a college in Chennai, I had a colleague, and we used to talk a lot about various things, including education, mainly about education, because we were actually sort of struggling with the idea of how do you educate young people to be socially conscious. This was a journalism college, so to do socially conscious journalism, maybe instead of going to write about the Femina Fashion Week, for example. So how do you talk about farmer suicides or caste and communal conflict, especially about rural India, essentially. And this was, we thought, what was not covered by mainstream journalism. So in the course of these conversations, once this friend told me, you should write a book saying what I taught Shanku. Shanku is my son, his name is Shankar. And he thought that whatever I taught Shanku was probably the best way to teach a young person. And when you do that, you think about teaching somebody from the time he's born, or from the time he's 1 or 2 years, or she is 1 or 2 years old, and until they are, say, 20 or 21, and then you let them loose into the world, and hope that all the things that you have taught, or things that they have gathered from whatever you have taught, will not only stand them in good stead, but also enable them to progress in a certain trajectory of learning that would lead to somebody like Dr. Sridhar, who seems to know everything. I looked at his profile and I'm awestruck. And to be able to do that at that young age, I think that is what, I think we should actually be conducting education to create Dr. Sridhars. So that is the point of view I come from. I'll say a few more things. I had another big speech prepared, philosophy and all that. But for that, I need a lectern and a place where I can keep my papers and talk and so on, which is not possible here. So I'm not very good at this kind of extempore speaking. So what I'll do is there are 2 or 3 points that I would like to discuss in the course of this discussion. And I'm sure others will have their contributions, maybe not necessarily agreeing with me, but maybe even quarreling with me, which is fine. So I'll stop with that, and then who would like to continue?
Very kind of you to say those things. I think I'd like to pick up on what you said about educating the young, because I think if we look at all the disciplines that we have other than pure mathematics, poetry, philosophy, science, etc., one of the things that seems to be sort of like missing in the way in which we educate our children today is that they are coming to these topics as if they were settled, concretized fragments of knowledge in the past, and not organically sort of coming into these topics as if they were telling them about the world around them. And I think that the children have to be taken seriously here in their sort of disinterest in, as far as I can tell, most of the subjects around. Because great works of the past that we study and we call it knowledge, and we put it into the sort of, put children into the mill to sort of receive these great works. They were responding to things that were happening at the time. And they emerged organically, right? So great works are not, no writer writes a great work of science or philosophy in order that children 500 years down the line will, be studying these things in school. That's not ever the intention, right? Textbooks have that intention, but textbooks are sort of, digesting and synthesizing great works again. So what do we do about this sort of conundrum, I think is an important question to answer. And I think one of the things which has made sort of the young feel so distant from the works that they study is the fact that the rhythms of their lives are completely different now because of the internet, because of technology. And a long novel seems almost a kind of strange archaism, right? Like a novel comes into a world where people have leisure, free time, yes, but people also have nothing else to do. So they sit down and they read a novel. But ironically, despite the fact that the internet is often touted as a kind of panacea because everybody has access to information all the time, in this inundation of information, what we have is an inability to actually comprehend, understand, and these things take time. So I think one of the useful things that in the future, an educator can do is reintroduce the young to the rhythms of life, which take time, duration, patience. These kinds of virtues, I think, are fast on the wane. Again, because of this inundation of information, if I don't understand something, I can just Google it and get the information very quickly. So one of the sort of policy proposals that were that are often discussed, it was discussed in the UK, and I believe it was discussed during the time of the NEP, is and of course there are horrible examples in the past of what I'm about to suggest, which is that there's an extent to which the young might benefit from seeing commodity through from the field to the plate, right? And this is one of the things that were discussed in the NEP. So sending the young to farms to sort of cultivate rice, perhaps seeing any form of commodity, whether it be clothes or food, seeing it from the origin to your plate, right? So the kind of time, patience that it requires to sort of sit through something like that, labor, persevere, understand how chancy these things are, have your work be subject to the elements, to nature, to the sort of shifting graces of nature. These are virtues that would be, I think, useful to instill in the young, because you often hear this sort of cliche that the average American elementary school goer thinks that vegetables come from the supermarket, right? So I think before we reintroduce the young to great works again, which a lot of people lament that people don't read anymore, people don't take works seriously anymore, I think the root cause of that is really the fact that we've come into a new era of digesting information, and most of the works that we study as knowledge that belongs in the curriculum are written into a completely different human world, a human world where one had to actually strive and labor in order to get what one wants. So it would be important, I think, to sort of almost make an effort to reintroduce the young to sort of the rhythms that are actually rhythms of life that are actually required in order to sustain the kind of convenience, comfort, and sort of automated life that most people in cities nowadays live. So that would be one of the proposals that were thrown out, but I think would be interesting to reintroduce.
Thank you for the suggestion of how the education should ideally take place. I think it is already happening in some elite private spaces. But the problem here is the mass education. When we go to the government schools and the ordinary spaces of education, we had such experiments in Kerala, for example, but they failed because the students are falling after this into the examination system, where their experience and organic connection with what they study is not taken into consideration. This is an exam-oriented, performance-oriented system still, where marks matter, your rank matters. Without that, you don't get admissions into even the private elite universities where they advocate experiential kind of organic learning. That divide is always glaring at us. How can you integrate the heterogeneity of our community into the education? How can you make it subjective? How can the local context of students become relevant? I guess the only way is to stop having exams at every point. We should have another kind of evaluation and assessment which will empower the students rather than eliminate them. I was sitting here in the previous session, which was about the relevance of PSE exams. And the former chairman, I guess, of the PSE said, listen, the PSE exams are a means of eliminating students. It's not about their competence. In a country like India, where 10,000 of people are writing these eligibility exams, where most of my students also are present, how do you really, bring them into, how do you take out a group of people who can work as teachers in various professions in these OMR-based examination systems? How can they really bring their experience into play? That is very difficult. It has to be homogeneous, I guess. So that is the biggest problem here that we need to address. And the second is, again, in this mass education, how can we bring in tailor-made modules where the people can choose what they want to study based on their experience and interest? Because most of the time, I teach English literature to people, thousands of people from across India. A very, very minor percentage of them are really interested in what they are studying. It's not their fault. That is how the society is. They have come from a school system where reading was not important. They don't know that they should read. That is the biggest tragedy of it. They think the exam is something that you should study with shortcuts, with guides. They're not even aware that I teach them the importance of reading. I take them through the experience of reading. And they say, ma'am, for the first time in my life, I understand why we should read a book. What were they doing till now? What was the system doing to them? I don't know. So, again, because of exams, because you ask teachers of ordinary schools and colleges, they'll tell you, we have so many books to cover, the syllabus is so heavy, the portions are not finished, so where do we get time to read? They don't get time to read, teachers don't get time to read. The Indian education system is the biggest, it has the biggest curriculum, more than anywhere in the world, I guess. The number of, you don't even read one book properly in the entire 21 years that you study most of the time. So that is why we fall short. This is the present. The future of education should definitely address this issue and correct it in some way. And the next thing is, there are two streams, the academic stream and the professional stream. Maybe it is doing better in the professional stream, I'm not fully aware of it. In the academic stream, students do not know most of the time why they are studying this subject. They think the only thing they can do after getting an MA in English or an MA in anything or MSc is to teach that subject, especially English literature. The second thing that they can do is teach the language. And then they don't know why they are teaching, why they are learning literature. So what are the careers? They are not aware. How to mold a career? What are the different opportunities that they have? Maybe they know in, again, the elite educational spaces, but not in the mass higher education field where this problem starts from the school level, which Anirudh was addressing. And my hope and dream, I'm nobody to talk about the future of education. Whatever problems are there in the future, I'll try to solve in my way with my students. That's all I can say. But I hope that, like in the professional stream, in academics also, there will be a work-integrated learning process, a work-based learning process, a project-based learning process, so that students will learn as they work. The solution to all this lies here with Tom and his field, I'm sure, where students from across the world can work online and study online and get experience also online. I think that is what is happening, but the system is not in place. They don't know what to do first, what to do next, the stages, that is not clear. They are just watching videos in YouTube. This is what the students I'm working with do. They watch videos all the time in YouTube here and there is no structure to their studying, there is no structure to their knowledge. It is all haphazard, fragmented. So if I can say it in a nutshell, I hope the future of education would be towards self-learning and not teaching so much. I hope the future of education would be towards lifelong learning through internet and all the facilities that are available, and also more collaborative, where we can get to collaborate, where the interdependencies will be more accentuated, where we can connect with people from across the world, people from our fields, which is not again happening within the education system everywhere in a structured manner. And also combining the academic and the professional effectively. I hope that will make education more inclusive. What do you think?
This is like, I mean, we have a big ocean and we are clueless, I mean, which fish we have to catch. The topic is very, very broad, and I thought if I'm picking up the last point she left, which is very simple, the definition of education. I think, I mean, we have been used to the so-called definition, which is going to the school and educate kids. But I think, I mean, the new definition of education is all about giving opportunity. What is opportunity all about? To introduce the new skill sets or to familiarize the new skill sets and give them the confidence to practice that. We don't ask them to, by heart all the formulas. We don't ask them to by heart all the poems. We don't ask them to by heart all the essays, I mean, which we used to do in the schools. It's all about just introducing the new skill sets. It's not about coding. We used to care about coding, programming as a skill set, or I mean, the so-called mathematical formulas as a skill set, which is not the right one. If I draw a report, I mean, if I borrow a couple of words from the recent report published by the UNESCO, they're talking about the top 10 skill sets. I think, I mean, a couple of them are which we never thought about. That's, the kind of creativity, ideation, innovation, ability to work in a team, and the willingness to learn the technology. Have we ever thought about these are the skill set? The so-called definition of skill set was, by having some formula or some poems or some essays, or, your numerical accuracy, the speed, which we used to practice in the schools and, early plus twos or PUCs. But this is something different. You should see one thing. I mean, especially if I take education in the business perspective, each student is a consumer. They come with a very conscious choice what exactly they have to learn and what exactly they expect from school or from the system. With NEP coming in place, if I take the higher education, the kids can move from one university to another university after a year, after a semester. That means your consumer, they don't mind to switch their royalty if you are not serving them properly well. This is something come in place. We never thought about, this kind of scenario. It was like a forced system. If you take, 6 years, 7 years back, when you get into a school or college or a university, you were forced to study what exactly the university has been following for decades and decades. So, mostly my parents and, I study the same textbook in the graduation or undergraduation. Am I right? So this something changed in the, recent scenario. It's not about, just the regulation. The kind of exposure we have to the technology or to the, the kind of exposure we have with the new world. The new world. The word new is super important here. The world is getting changed on a day-to-day basis or a minute-by-minute basis. So we have a lot of exposures, and the students, they typically act like a consumer, and they come with a very conscious choice what exactly they have to learn. You cannot, log them for 3 years or 5 years anymore. So this is something has come up as a kind of a new development. When I say, I've been asked a lot of questions in the last couple of months when I go for this kind of sessions. And do you think technology can replace education? The traditional education? I never said that. I said technology can accelerate the education, the growth of education. It can address the scale and it can bring the efficiency. I don't think it will replace education. If when we used to address these kind of questions in the past as well, do you think, machines will replace or computer will replace human? My answer was something different. Of course, the human will be replaced with a computer. Who knows computer? If you recall, I'm not sure, how many of you have read the McKinsey report in 2013, which is very simple, the education to employment. So it has come out over a decade back. And 2013, we are talking about the crisis in United States and even Europe or even London, and a lot of financial institutions have gone bankrupt. And we were highly talking about the unemployment and employment. The McKinsey report was something, funny. The McKinsey has come up with a finding. There are 70 million jobs existing at this point of time. What do you mean by that? Are we not producing the right talent in 2013? Or are we not addressing the kind of expectation the employers are looking for? I think in the future of education has to, meet the expectation. When you produce something, of course, we call universities as factories, of course, take it as a factory. When we produce something, that has to meet what exactly the industry or the employers are looking for. It can be any sector, which was missing couple of decades back, couple of years back. I think, today also we are still talking about the industry academia gap. That's a one big thing we have to sort, and we have to find a way. And when we talk about future of education, of course, and one critical point is the assessment. How do we assess the students? Are we assessing the right way? We cannot admit all the students into Harvard or Yale or even Oxford or any of Ivy League or Russell Group universities. But we need the right assessment system to find out the best people to cater that. And Harvard and Yale or even Oxford or Cambridge, that's not the end of life. I think that's kind of awareness as to go to the mass crowd. If you are not getting into IIT, IIM, you are not losing your life. You cannot expect the 1.2 billion population here, out of the 27% or 30% are young crowd. You cannot expect all the 30% of this 1.2 billion going to IIT and IIMs. How many IITs and IIMs we have? I think the kind of we should have some sort of initiative to educate, especially the parents. The so-called pressure is coming from the parents or within the family to educate them. The opportunities available, and kids are very clear. I think the students are very clear. They know the opportunities, but they were forced to take this kind of pressure from the family. Since the parents are coming with the examples from the neighborhood. I'm saying that this guy has gone to the IIT. There's next is your turn, and someone has gone to IIM. Next is your turn. I think this kind of awareness has to come within the family. And moreover, the kind of support, especially for the young crowd from the school level or from the school leaving level, the 10+2 level, to introduce them, see the opportunities existing. Not just technology or not just engineering or not just the medical or healthcare. There are plenty of opportunities available in this country, and make them prepare. Ask for the attitude, what exactly they're looking for, what is their skill sets, and accordingly prepare them. And from the school level itself, from the college level itself, the way of assessing them and the way of preparing them, rather than, the teaching style has changed. As I rightly mentioned, you don't need the teachers to teach traditionally they used to do in the classrooms. You have the entire information on your fingertips, better than your teacher. But you need some, good facilitator. The role of teacher or the role of university as a facilitator. We have plenty of things in the internet. We have a lot of things in the internet. Guide them what exactly to prioritize when they pursue a curriculum, when they pursue something, a degree. This is what we need in the education system. especially considering the size of the market, the size of the higher education market, and it cannot be addressed only through the physical face-to-face taught model. Technology is there, and technology can, up to an extent, address this mass. I just, when I was starting this one of the edtech, just 3 years back, the online higher education degree concept. That time, the online degree was, especially higher education, is highly regulated in India. It was not allowed to offer online until 2020, with the introduction of the online degree regulation. When we started one venture, we never thought the market has so much depth. We thought of doing, attracting 3,000 learners or 4,000 learners, and we ended up in getting 21,000 learners for the online degree. The response and the kind of response you're getting from the market, the kind of response you're getting from the learners is something phenomenal. And there's a place for each and every institution, and there's a place for each and every player in this market. At the same time, when we talk about future, and we should talk about the very inclusive future, which has to address the needs of the industry, which has to address the challenges and the problems because of the demographic dividend. We have two things. One is demographic dividend as a challenge to address the mass skilling or education opportunity, and then it's a virtue. We have an opportunity to create the largest, the knowledge economy with our human talents. I think these are the 2-3 things. We can, when we talk about the future of education, and I think we prefer to take. I prefer to take some questions from the panel rather than. We keep on talking these points, and these points are very much there in the social platforms, or in the internet. When you search for the future of education, there are, you can see 10, 25 responses from each and every educationist. I think it's better to have some good questions from the panel, and we can pick it up rather than we keep debating, or we keep talking about the future. Hi. Okay. Can someone give a mic?
We'll take the questions after you.
After sir, we can take a question.
Okay. So many points have been raised, and I'll try and address a few of them from my own lights. Now we have somehow seem to have come to some kind of a division between education as skills development, as people who, very important, because we want people to get whatever education, whatever institute or college or other kinds of educational institutions that they go to. And then they go out of there, and they should be able to do something. Whatever they learn there should be in some way translated into some kind of activity. People should be able to do things. That was one point. The other is the idea of developing, I would say, good human beings. And probably there is some arrogance in saying that we can actually do things in order to develop human beings in any particular way or something. All we can do is to probably address values or bring about values into our educational system or into our practice of education. In many things that Dr. Sridhar and Mrs. Vallath had already talked about reading, for example, and reading in an organic way. Dr. Sridhar talked about the human context, the reading that is related to human living, rather than just reading books to which you don't relate at all. You read things, and as Dr. Vallath said, you repeat things, you go out, and the only thing that you can do is to teach the things that you didn't really learn, didn't really understand. I remember a long time ago, a sociologist of education who went to the Boston education system because it was considered one of the worst school systems in the United States. And he went and spent a lot of time in the school system, actually teaching and so on. And then later he wrote a series of books called Why Johnny Can't Read, Why Johnny Can't Do Math, and so on. And I remember seeing him on a television program, and he was being interviewed, and he was asked, why do you think Johnny can't read? And it's very similar to what Dr. Vallath said. Johnny can't read because his teacher can't read. Maybe. And so we send out students who are, as she said, who are getting advanced degrees in literature, and they have no way of connecting what they have learned, if they have learned anything at all, rather than memorizing things for the examination. And how do you relate that to the world, the way in which we live, the world in which we not only conduct our lives, but we conduct our relationships, and everything, as Dr. Sridhar said, when you go out there and interact with the world, how does this education help you? Or what has it taught you that you would behave in a certain way? I always used to think that you can learn everything from film. I'm a big film fan. I like films. So, and there's a scene in an old Godard, all Godard films are old, I suppose, an old Godard film where this woman is going to spread a bed sheet over a mattress. So the mattress is on the floor. And what she does is she stands at the foot of the mattress, holding the bed sheet on two sides with her toes, and holds it up, and then falls on the mattress. And then she, so they are, the male character, it must have been Jean-Paul Belmondo or somebody like that. So where did you learn that? And she said, I learned it from a film. I said, you learn everything from films. And here is something that I learned from a film. The film is called Ustad Hotel, that most of you, I'm sure, would know. And in Ustad Hotel, there is a scene where the young man who is a cook, who has actually learned a lot about cooking, and has got admission to Cordon Bleu in France. So he's about to go, but before he goes, his grandfather sends him to Madurai, where the grandfather's friend is running a catering organization, catering operation. And he's given a letter. So he hands over the letter to this friend who has this operation in Madurai. I'm sure all of you know this story, right? And the letter says, I have taught him how to cook. Maybe. He knows how to cook. Now you teach him why cook. എന്തിനു വേണ്ടിയിട്ടാണ് നമ്മൾ പാചകം ചെയ്യുന്നത്? Teach him how to do that, sir. I think what our education should do is to teach, or probably what it should address is, why teach? Why are we teaching? What are we trying to achieve while we are teaching? And if you have some focused notion of why we are doing it, at least that is one step in the right direction. And there are a lot of things to teach, and most of them will have very little to do with our typical academic curriculum. And one of the things which I think Dr. Sridhar sort of marginally touched upon, tangentially touched upon, is our relationship with the world, our relationship with nature, with the elements, etc. And if, I don't know, many of you, is it out? Oh, all right, I'll just finish this particular one. I hope somebody will then go and read this book. It's a contemporary philosopher, a fairly young woman, I think, called Jane Bennett, who has written a book called Vibrant Ecology. But one of the things that Bennett and several other actually novelists actually talk about, poets, Mary Howe, American poet, talk about this notion of our interconnectedness, but interconnectedness that is something that we all talk about, that we are one with the same universe as the animals, the mammals, and maybe even microbes and bacteria, butterflies, fireflies. But Bennett goes one step further. She talks about our relationship with things things we generally think of as inanimate. A tree stump, a table. And how do we actually incorporate them into our lives or into our consciousness as important members? How do we react to things? And it's something that requires a great deal of attention, concentration. I don't like the word mindfulness and the whole movement that is associated with mindfulness, but this is probably something that comes closest to that idea of being fully present to something all the time. It's not easy. It requires levels of concentration that are almost impossible to attain. I think only probably sadhus, people who have attained enlightenment, we are probably the only ones who can do that. But this is a worthwhile attempt. And what I would like to do is to have a system of education which will at least sort of plant the seeds of this idea when the children are young, maybe, that you are not alone. You don't live just for yourself. You don't get an education in order to get a salary, etc. All those things are important. I'm not denigrating it at all. But at the same time, there is something else that you have to do with your education. That's something that you have to do with your learning. Some idea of enchantment, of magic that you should bring into your life. I'll close with a very, very short story from Borges. I'm sure all of you know the Argentine writer, Jorge Luis Borges. Borges talks about an incident where he talks about his nephew who comes to stay with him fairly often. And the nephew tells him his dreams. Every morning he tells him his dreams from the past night. And one of the recurring dreams is the boy says that he's lost. He's lost, and then he finds himself in the middle of a field. And there is a white wooden house. And he sees his uncle coming out of the house. Then he stops the summary of this dream, and then he asks his uncle, "Uncle, what were you doing in that house?" And Borges says, "I was looking for a book." And the boy was happy. And Borges goes on to say that he was young enough to be able to incorporate that logic of his dream into the logic of his uncle's explanation. And then, of course, he went on to say that, "I think that is how I write my books also." So that kind of enchantment is something I think education should promote. Question.
This was a very interesting discussion, and it is a very vast topic, but unfortunately we don't have any time for questions. So you can definitely interact with them off stage. So thank you so much for a wonderful discussion, and thank you for being a great audience. I would like to invite Mr. Sudeep Kumar, General Manager Mathrubhumi, to give away mementos to Dr. Tom Joseph and Mr. Sreekumar Menon. Actually, we can have one question after this. Yeah. Please give them a round of applause.
Hi, I had a question to ask regarding the amount of pressure that students, educators, and parents do face. I mean, at the end of the day, they are all being sold the great Indian dream, which is getting into these limited IITs and IIMs, making sure that they get a stable job, move on to the right kind of companies and things. But we're not talking about how the infrastructure is what is lacking. There's a reason why there are so many people competing for a very limited amount of seats, right? Ideally, even if students do want to get into IITs and IIMs, there should be enough seats for them. There should be access to the same. So what do you feel we need to make a change in terms of government policy, in terms of things that educators can do themselves, in terms of school management? How do you think we can increase accessibility to higher education spaces?
Thank you. This is a very interesting question. In fact, if you take the entire our budget, the budget on the different sectors. See, government has a limitation. Yeah, of course. I mean, if you look at the recent budget as well, any of the budget, even state or central government, education is a concurrent subject, and it's a part of state has its own responsibility, and central has their own responsibility and rights as well. And government cannot do beyond an limit, considering the kind of the financial infrastructure with them. But at the same time, the kind of measures they've taken, I think I was giving a review last week about the budget in higher education in Kerala. The government should act as a facilitator, and they should facilitate, they should bring the private investments, and they should bring the best collaborative approach. And I think, for any industry at this point of time, the collaborative working, the partnership working, the right way of working. And you cannot expect, government can come with another 100 IITs or IIMs. And the second thing is that, and as I rightly mentioned before, IIT and IIM is not the end of the education. There are established institutions operating in this country and outside country. We don't need any geographical division or a kind of classification when it comes to education. We're talking about the world as a market, the world as a the kind of opportunity for us. There are many institutions operating in different parts of the world, and we cannot expect government can feed or come up with hundreds of establishment to address this the demand. And when I take India, see, the kind of demand which is abnormal, considering our the kind of the youth population and the young kids coming out from the school. What I said, we need some sort of collaborative approach. We need government should act as a facilitator to promote new institutions and make it empower them, empower the private ones, and empower the current existing government education institutions to make it at par with IIT and IIMs. Rather than just the tag, rather than coming with the IIT and IEM tag, come out with a lot of center of excellences. Whatever existing in the country, the so-called state and university, state colleges, or even the private university, empower them, and facilitate right policies, and facilitate a right guidance, and facilitate right partnership to make them at par with IIT and IEMs.
Could I just say something about that question? Hello. Okay. IITs and IIMs, as Dr. Joseph said, they are highly overvalued. If you don't go to IITs and IIMs, nothing would happen. There are lots and lots of other institutions where
We're dealing with cities like Kotha, where the entire focus is on education and making sure that people get into IITs, IIMs. I feel like I agree with you, there is a lot of undue pressure to enter these institutions. But when there are children killing themselves because they can't make it in, I feel like maybe increasing the number of such schools, or at least making sure that there is a better standard so that people know that other institutions exist, should be a thing. I feel like when we're discussing the future of education, one of the conversation topics should also be the sheer amount of pressure that we see students undertake and the kind of drastic measures they take after the same.
The parents are killing themselves to get the children into these students. Children are not killing. Children are being killed because the parents want them to be in these institutions. They don't. If the parents stop pressuring the children and say that, if you don't get into IIT, your life is done, it's finished, etc. And it is not true. And we don't even value the graduates from IITs are not really that great. I can assure you that.
Just to add, sir, he said it. In fact, I was saying the same thing when I was speaking as well. We should introduce as a part of the school curriculum and, guide them, teach them, and, what are the opportunities available, and give them proper values. Even you come up with hundreds of IIMs and IITs, still Kota will come with hundreds of suicide episodes. It won't stop. We should have a proper system in the school education, make them, and make them understand the purpose of life and the value of life. This is what we need. Yeah.
One more. One of my one of my friends went to NIT and did well, etc. But he didn't want to be an engineer. He went and did something else. And I asked him why he studied engineering at NIT, and he said, his father said, "Anna padicha pustakam ella waste ayi poidum." So he said that his elder brother had studied engineering, and all those books would go to waste if he hadn't actually continued with it. The younger brother had also studied engineering. That is the way people go to these things.
Just as an add-on, I also would like to ask about one thing. This is also from my personal experience that I have done my engineering. Then that's because of the pressure, so-called pressure of my parents. I did it in Telangana. So you have heard about Sri Chaitanya and many other so-called factories that have been more demanding to make you a doctor or engineer. So parents are more pressurized that only doctor or a successful engineer can land you into a good paid job. Then I chose to do my MA in public policy. So that was my choice. That was my curiosity, and I went behind that. So there is no much awareness that is given, though there are a lot of career guidance that is given. There is no much awareness about how to go about it. Other than an engineer or doctor, don't you think there is respect and there is a lot more opportunities like you have seen in other countries as well? So what is the future of that? How can we deal with it?
We've actually exceeded time, so if you could make the responses short, it would be great.
Well, the desperation to get into IITs and IIMs, as well as our desperation to continue this conversation, shows a very important problem in the society. It is a matter that we should deal with elsewhere. There should be an awareness that we can have other careers also, which is what I said. People are not aware of what other things we can do. And also, it shows that there is a dearth of, there is a serious need for greater quality of education in all the other realms, which is what is the biggest problem of the future. And let us hope it will be addressed. Let us spread awareness. Let us work towards it. Thank you very much. Time for the next session.